Last session of Research 101. This is number 11. I'm Margaret Lynn, and I'm Director of the Office of Clinical Research Development here at UTHSC. And I, along with Dorita Brand, who's the Program Director for the Tennessee Clinical and Translational Science Institute, want to welcome you. We hope this has been beneficial to you. The goal was to provide some basic information for research study conduct, and we hope to work on Research 102 soon. So be looking for notices in your email about upcoming sessions. This session is being recorded, and all of the sessions will be posted on our website, hopefully in July. So during our sessions, your microphone has been muted, so leave that on mute. We've been pretty successful in not having too many technical difficulties, but if something happens and we can't resolve it, then we will terminate the session and then it will be posted on our website. So at the end of the session or later on this week, you'll receive an evaluation by email, and after you complete that evaluation, you'll be able to download a certificate of attendance. Dorita Brand and I, along with Risa Ramsey, who's providing support for nursing continuing education, have no real or apparent financial disclosures. Today's session is monitoring visits and audits, and our speaker is Jennifer Burgess, MS. Jennifer has 17 years of clinical research experience. She's worked for industry sponsors, both drug and device, international contract research organizations, academic institutions, and freestanding research centers. She has implemented several quality assurance systems, and she comes to us today as the Director of Clinical Research at Erlanger Health Systems in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And during her session, if you use the chat function to ask questions, send it to everyone, and then hopefully she can answer these questions at the end of her talk. So Jennifer, we look forward to it. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you guys for attending the last session, and I hope that this is as interesting of an area that the rest of them have been, and I look forward to answering any questions that come up. So feel free to send those along throughout the process. So conflict of interest disclosure, I don't have any conflicts in this presentation. There is no commercial support or endorsements of products during this presentation either. As indicated, I am Jennifer Burgess. I run the here at Erlanger Health System in Chattanooga, the Director of Clinical Research, so all clinical research within our health system. Here in Chattanooga, the health system is separate from the university, so we have the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga across the street. We're going to talk about monitoring versus auditing. I just want to go ahead and touch on this. There is a difference between the two. This training is specifically going to be addressing monitoring, and auditing is a little bit of a different beast, and so we won't get too deep into the auditing aspect, but we want to make sure that you understand the difference of the two terms. Monitoring is defined as an act of overseeing a process of a clinical trial to ensure that the conduct and recording and reporting is in accordance to the protocol, standard operating procedures, SOPs, and any applicable regulatory requirements. Auditing, however, is a systematic and independent examination of trial-related activities, documents, and determine whether the evaluated trial-related activities were conducted and the data were recorded, analyzed, and accurately reported to the protocol sponsors, SOPs, GCP, and applicable regulatory requirements. So essentially, auditing is an independent review. It looks at things slightly differently than monitoring. Monitoring is something that we all can do on our own, of our own information and research. Auditing is usually someone that is not specifically affiliated with the trial, that is kind of outside eyes looking in, if you will. So what is monitoring? Well, it's the ongoing process of conducting before, during, and after a clinical trial review. So what this means is that you can monitor a clinical trial before it opens, during its activation and enrollment, as well as after the study has already closed. We classify these really into four distinct types of visits. The pre-initiation, or oftentimes referred to a PSSV, a pre-study site visit. Initiation, usually like your SIV, site initiation visit, routine, interim, and for cause. These are also sometimes referred to as IMVs, interim monitoring visits, and a closeout visit, or a COV. If you are conducting a sponsored trial, the sponsor often appoints a monitor who will help conduct these monitoring visits, and that is based on the monitoring plan that is established for each individual study. The purpose of monitoring is to protect the right, safety, and welfare of all patients. We like to assess the study of the conduct and the process of the trial while evaluating study compliance and ensuring data accuracy, completeness, and verifying that source documents confirm the data validation and entering and information matches our source. Monitoring, everything that we do, we want to protect the patient's safety, rights, and welfare, but we need to make sure that everything we do in research, as the golden rule, is if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So they want to make sure that what we're doing throughout the trial is documented, it is supported in our source and information within the trial. And we want to make sure that we monitor throughout a trial, because we don't want to wait till the very end and discover that we have problems that are now a major issue because we didn't catch them early on. So here's some regulations and guidance. There are lots of regulations that are general, such as your ICH and federal regulations. Those cover a wide area of monitoring requirements and expectations. Your protocol is going to be specific to tell you what is expected for the individual study that you're conducting. So a protocol is going to be on a direct basis of the data that you're looking at and the conduct of the study. Standard operating procedures, whether that's institutional, departmental, or sponsor related, often cover a wide area as well. The ICH GCP E6 R2, that's an international standard. Federal regulations, IRB review, IRB policy and procedures, institutional requirements, NIH, and the Office of Human Research Protection. So a lot of these cover our standard that is at a national or international level, and then including some sponsor regulations across multiple modalities, and then the protocol is going to be your very specific to the individual trial that you're conducting. So, of course, when we talk about research, it feels like everybody's watching, right? So this is a cute little cartoon that shows everybody's got all eyes on the research study, everything from the monitor and the IRB to OHRP even. So everybody's taking a good old look at these poor little fish in this bowl. Everybody loves compliance. I know you're all truly feeling this on the inside. So there you can see what you're really feeling on the outside, right? Auditing is stressful, so this was a good illustration to show you that thank goodness we're talking about monitoring and not auditing. Okay, so let's talk about those 4 different types that we talked about earlier. So site assessments and site selection visits are our first part that we have an opportunity to truly look at monitoring. So this is really conducted to establish and assure that the site resources and capabilities are there to conduct the clinical trial ethically and effectively. So things that they look at in regards to the site or institution's resources and infrastructure are: who's the PI? What are their qualifications and capabilities? Do they have sufficient time to dedicate to the clinical trial? What does the staff look like? Do we have dedicated clinical research staff? Are they qualified? Do they have adequate time? What are the facilities? What are the equipment? Do you have a CT or an MRI on site? Can you do labs? Can you do PKs? Things like that. What is the patient population? Do you see this patient population? And then what of the patient population that you see would potentially even be eligible for this type of research? It also gives them an idea of the expectation to put onto the site for enrollment. So being honest with all of this information and numbers helps to ensure a compliance from the site's perspective to participate, but it also ensures that a compliance to our patients and to our contract. So we want to make sure that if we say we're going to be able to put 10 patients on, we're not we're making sure we're not fluffing that number, that these numbers are solid based on our patient population, other available facilities, equipment, and time available. It's also important to disclose and report any competing studies, as that can affect enrollment as well. Sponsors come in and they look at this information and they want to make sure that they're choosing an institution that isn't just saying yes, 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 but an institution that does have all this infrastructure in place to ensure that it's going to be a study that we can conduct well and enroll well on. Some helpful tips to ensure a successful visit is to schedule the visit in advance and to give all the attendees ample time to ensure they participate. Have available current credentials for each study member. Make sure that you ask in advance the time specifically needed for the PI and investigator to participate, and schedule in advance any visits with other departments. So the investigator usually these visits can happen 4 to 8 hours. The investigator isn't needed for that whole time. Usually they need it for maybe 30 to 60 minutes. So scheduling the time with the investigator so that they can come in, address the specific concerns or questions that are applicable to the physician, and the enrollment expectations are imperative. If your study involves drug, making sure that the pharmacist is available, making sure that any other specific attendees or departments are aware that the visit is happening. Even if the visit includes radiology, for example, but they don't need to speak to anybody in radiology, it's still nice to give them a heads up in case you have to come through with a tour or anything like that, so they're aware what's going on, and you'll be needing their potential services if you end up moving forward the clinical trial. So getting everybody on the same page is important. Preparation is key for these. You can have visits that are 2 hours, and you can have ones that are 10 hours. It really depends on how much you are prepared and organized for this visit and the questions that arise. Once you've been site selected and you get through the startup process, then you get ready for site initiation visit. Usually site initiation visit, or SIV, is the last step to activating the trial at your site. So this is usually an all-day meeting. It can be a little bit less depending on the type of trial that it is. But the goal of this meeting is that once this visit is completed, you can begin enrollment right away. So having everything done in advance of this meeting and preparing and organizing this meeting adequately is essential to making sure that you start off on the right foot. So study-specific information will be discussed with the study team and PIs. Training of any study team members, as well as assessing resources and capabilities of the site to conduct the study. So your PI will need to be present. It's also suggested that things like your sub-investigators are also available. One, it allows them to all be in the same room and address any questions they have. It also gives the ample opportunity to have them present and document their training accordingly. Sometimes training can be done during an SIV. Some of it has to be done through a sponsor's portal, so it can vary a little bit. But by having all of those parties at that training or at that visit is essential to ensuring everybody's on the same page. Preparing for these meetings are also a huge asset. You are going to have time that the PI is going to be there, and then you're going to have time that the pharmacist is there. You're going to have time that your study coordinators are there. That doesn't mean they all need to block an 8-hour day. You need to work with your sponsor to ensure that you have everything set up so that you can plan the day accordingly. But having everyone available to ensure that everyone's on the same page and all the information and training is shared and documented is essential to ensure that the monitoring is off on the right foot. So a lot of things that happen during the SIV, discussions of the roles and responsibilities of the PI and study team members. That is a GCP requirement to ensure that the investigator knows their roles and responsibilities. Signing of the monitoring log, along with the study team member to ensure that they document that they're visiting your site, and for that reason. They will usually ask for a tour of your site and facility and equipment. Yes, they usually do one at the pre-study visit, but they are required to do one again at the site initiation visit. They'll collect any outstanding documents. So a lot of times if you're doing the regulatory documents, you've sent them copies, but they need originals. They'll often say, hey, we can just pick the originals up when we're there on site. The training will vary from sponsor to sponsor, but here on the right is a good list of the types of trainings that you'll see. You'll get overall study protocol training,